Hey folks, Doug Blake with Body Design University. And in today's video, this weekly study session, I'm going to give you some tips on how to deal with chapter 8. Now, I've gone over individual chapters in our exam study prep course where we spend a lot of time, at least up to an hour, going over the actual chapter. But what I wanted to do today was to answer a question that one of our students have sent to me who's actually taking the prep course right now. Is a great question. Because I'm asked all the time about this in particular. Chapter 8 is a bear of a chapter. Why? Because it's the sort of anatomy, physiology, cardiorespiratory training, assessments, and programming. It's a lot of information, a lot of material. If I can show you how thick that, it's a ton of stuff, right? But it's nothing different than any of the other really meaty chapters that we have with a lot of information, particularly if you don't have a background in it. And so what I wanted to do today was kind of help you in that study process, because the one main thing that I wanted to kind of go over and help you to focus on here, when you're watching any of the study videos, weekly study videos that we do, you got to always be asking the same question. How much time do you have before you take your exam? And I've seen it. I've got a week and I haven't opened the textbook. Well, what do you want me to do? I mean, study 3 pages because maybe you'll get 15 questions correct. And you get the idea, right? And then we have folks that for the most part are getting 4 months, 5 months of studying in before they sit for the exam. Look, if you've got I've seen people take this exam, study really well because they knew how to study and they had the right study techniques and strategies, do it in 30 days. Okay, that's a short period of time, but you could do it 6 weeks even. Generally, when you hit the 2 to 3 month mark, you now have enough time to do the appropriate type of studying to sort of absorb and digest the entire textbook. If you have more than 3 months, good for you. If you know how to study and you have your, an hour to an hour and a half a day, and you can do that 5 days, whatever the case is, the total amount of time you spend is going to be more than enough, as long as you understand the material. In chapter 8, however, David, who's a student I'm talking about, he's like, how much should I get into the weeds? And that's a great question, because look, you go through this, if you don't have any background in anatomy, physiology, it could be a little bit of a challenge. And there's a couple of chapters in this textbook where it's like that. So let me help you out a little bit. First and foremost, I say it all the time, and I'm not really sure if most people get it. I sure hope you do. Read, write, recite. Read, write, recite. Use one of these if you're a tactile learner, along with you're doing all your stuff that you're doing, right, to show you're physically doing the activity to help you learn it. Grab one of these if you're a tactile learner, and that's what you use to distract yourself, because learning style tells us tactile learners need to be distracted, tactily distracted while they're reading and writing. Okay. This is not a video on learning styles, but there you go. Audiological learners, for those of you that like to listen, of course, literally listening to this video is helping you out. Put your face in front of do this if you don't want to watch, but you can listen to it. Obviously, it's going to help. But guess what you need to do? Tactile learners, visual, audiological, it doesn't matter. Reading, writing type of folks, you need to read it and rewrite it. You get it? You need to read and rewrite. Audiological learners can assist with the memorization of material by, when they are reading and writing, listening. That's why I say read, write, and recite. If I want to memorize, just memorize the cardiovascular system or whatever the case is, arteries and arterioles. Now, I could say that in my head, and me personally, because I'm a visual learner, I can kind of write it down. And I'm not talking because I'm thinking it in my head. But if you're audiological in your learning style, you would literally do this. You would say arteries and arterioles, which carry oxygen-rich blood away from the heart. You would be saying it out loud. That's actually going to enhance your brain's absorptive capability, right, with this material. Okay, that's what you do. Tactile, you'd be holding that, right? So in chapter 8, then, because it's a bear of a chapter, you've got to somehow or another figure out how much time you need to put into it, right? So if you have all the time in the world, 3 months or more to do before you sit for your test, you can peruse the entire textbook. Then you would peruse the chapter, pens down, everybody pens down. A perusal is just reading through it and getting a 30,000-foot view. Read through it and be done with it. Don't spend any time trying to, and put your highlighters down. Pencils down, highlighters down. When you do a perusal, yeah, I know a lot of folks have a struggle with this because you never did it. You didn't learn how to do this in elementary school and high school like they should have been teaching you how to do these things. Read through it, hands off, except to turn the page, and get just a rough idea of the material. You can look at the pictures. Don't try and memorize anything. Perusal for chapter 8 will take you 10 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe, depending on how fast you read. Do not sit there and read through the content. A perusal means that you're looking at let me give you an overhead shot here, just so, and I'm going to use my finger to kind of help you out to let you know what a perusal is. So in this case, let me show you what it's like. So if I start at the beginning, watch what I do. You're in my head right now and you're watching me. So I know what my chapter headings are. And now watch what I do. And if you want to read along with me, humans are designed to move. Since, okay, I don't need that. I see something in bold. So the so-called diseases of civilization, okay, it can move on. Physical activity leads to improvements, and okay, you got it. Anatomical systems. Okay, I'm doing this for you to help you understand how you may want to learn how to peruse through a chapter. Anatomical systems, working knowledge, anatomy, phys. That's great. This is an intro, overall, and understanding, blah, blah. Cardiovascular, okay, let me kind of look at this. I'm going to read through arteries, capillaries, veins, see everything in bold. Liquid component, plasma, arteries, arterioles. You see what I'm doing? Is I'm not spending a whole lot of time. I don't want my brain to come to a stop sign. I want to keep moving. And whenever I see something bold, my eyes are geared towards that. By the way, just so you know, that's a effective tool that editors will use to help people get through the material a little bit quicker, as they bold a word or term that's more important than the rest surrounding material. And that's what your eyes are focused towards. That's what they move towards when you do a perusal of the chapter. Once you get done with the chapter, now you go back to the beginning, take a break, get something to eat, do some push-ups, do whatever, something physical. And now you go back. By the way, I use colored pencils. I use a lot of different things when I'm reading and rewriting. When I say rewrite, I'm not talking about just writing with a pen. I'm talking about drawing and using anything that gives you the physicality of using your hand and connecting and engaging with the materials. So that's what I do. And so now what I do is I come back to the beginning. And again, if I have 3 months or 4 months to study, then I'm going to do this just like I do with all the chapters. I'm going to look at my chapter headings and I'm going to write them down. And that's what generally a whole pad is going to be used for, because I'm writing it, rewriting it, tear it off, get rid of it, and keep rewriting over and over until I can't not remember the material. Go to anatomical systems. Chapter 8 tends to be from a representation on the exam component of it, is heavier on the end of the chapter. So if you look at chapter 8 for how important the material is, not for real world stuff, but just on the exam, it's basically those last 4 subheadings. Okay. And in the textbook, at least in this textbook, those subheadings that you see here, let me give you an overhead shot again. These subheadings, anatomical systems, physiology of cardiovascular, these guys are in red in your chapter. So once you open it up, you'll notice, if you're not colorblind, it's red, anatomical system. So that's the subheading right there. So what I want to do is I'm going to kind of keep this brief, but I would go through all of those, write down on my sheet of paper that heading, and I would go through the material, go back to the next one, physiology. I'd write that down. That'd be another pad that I use. spend a lot of time on the pads, right? But today what I want to do is show you assessments for cardiorespiratory fitness. So let's just say I've gotten through all the others, and now I get to this part. And I believe this is on page 296. Okay, so you'll notice there it is. It's in red. So that was one of the subheadings, assessments for cardio, respiratory, or respiratory fitness. Now, once I get here, I'm going to look to see how much I have. There's another page, another page. Okay, so here is where it ends, because that's the next one. So basically, I take, by the way, one of the reasons I do this is it gives me some hope that I can get through the material. Okay, let me go back. I do it so I'm not sitting there going, when is this part going to end? At least I know it's only a couple of pages. And I know I can study this and get this. Come on, right? So that's a little tip. Maybe psychologically it's going to help you. So basically what I'll do is I'll get to this area, and now this is where I dig deeper into the materials. I will say that this is a very important area for two reasons, just as an aside, folks. Ventilatory threshold, in this case, because that's the assessment that they're going to tell you about, the ventilatory threshold assessment, VT itself, it's probably one of the best things that ACE kind of pushes when it comes to the real world. I'm not saying you're going to use it, but it is the most effective way to determine where an individual's cardiorespiratory training should fall. And we call it zone training, very effective. We've been doing this with athletes for decades. We've always used zone training in some way, shape, or form. It's been around for a long time. Doing it with your clients, generally, you're only going to need to know VT1, right? That crossover point. VT2 is probably a little bit too high, and ACE will tell you that. But once I get in here, now what I'm going to do, and listen, this is critical that you understand this just from the perspective of studying this textbook. What ACE has done for you, and I say this in my study videos, chapter by chapter, look at your bullet points. Bullet points are a critical part of a chapter in this textbook. All they've done for you, see that? And your pictures, redraw your pictures. And by the way, if you all are having struggles with this picture, just again, as an aside, this is figure 819. Leave a message, comment, and let me know, and I'll be more than happy to do a particular video on that particular figure right there. But bullet points are really important. And my recommendation, here's one of the recommendations, is when you read through this, again, now I'm in one area and I'm going to bite, right? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. That's all I'm doing. This is only 3 pages. I can psychologically get into dealing with 3 pages of material, right? I'm not thinking about doing the entire textbooks, but once I get to bullet points, I'm going to rewrite those. And I'm going to rewrite those in my own words. Watch what I do. Okay. So it may be a little, the glare may be a little much on this, but during the administration of any exercise assessment involving exertion, blah, 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 they're telling you about some signs and symptoms you got to worry about. Onset of angina, chest pain, or angina-like symptoms. This is what I do, is I simply write. So now I've got assessments, right? See how I kind of wrote this heading? I'm going to start off with immediately signs and symptoms. And then underneath that, I'm just going to write angina. I don't need to write onset of angina, chest pain, or angina-like symptoms. I don't need to write that. Not from a studying perspective. Significant drop in systolic blood pressure. My next thing I'll write is drop. See what I'm doing? I'm condensing what they wrote into what makes more sense to me when I read back over it or rewrite it. And everything you see on these bullet points, the recommendation is to spend a little bit of time on those bullet points because they are important, and then collapse them down into wording, summarization that's most effective for you. And that's what I do here. You've got one group of bullet points here. Now, look, I'm with you right now, right? I'm with you on this particular subsection, ventilatory threshold assessment. Write that down. Now, what is it? It's based on physiological principle of ventilation. Now you're going to spend the majority of your time looking at figure 819. Okay, now you got to understand what that means. It could be a little confusing. If it is, like I say, leave a comment, let me know. Kind of read through the information. You're going to get to the chapter here on page 297 where it says respiratory compensation threshold. It's in bold, so it's probably important to know it. Again, when I say to know it, I mean rewrite it on a sheet of paper so you can memorize it. In well-trained individuals, VT1 is approximately highest intensity. That's good to know. Again, I'm not going to explain every single thing in this one section. I'm giving you the tip, giving you sort of the strategy to go through. Contraindications, if you'll notice, again, as you're going through this particular part, contraindications, what do you see? Bullet points. Okay, write those down. Those are important. Talk test. Again, anytime you see a heading and subheading title, write it down and then you can summarize. And there's some parts of this material in here that are very important that you will see on the exam. Notice how long this is taking us to go through. Now, submaximal talk test for VT1. Here's the deal now. Once you get to this area in this particular subsection, you've got lots of bullet points. My recommendation is that you go ahead and try to memorize not all of the bullet points, but a summarization of those bullet points, because this is just a list of how to do the actual assessment. And then the VT2 threshold assessment. Once you get to that, you're done for that particular subsection. Now go do something. Go take a break or whatever, however your study methodology works. And then you'll take another bite out of the elephant by grabbing this. Remember, this components of that was another subheading. I hope that's helpful. You know, I can do this for every chapter, basically show you the same exact thing. Your comfort level with the material before you get to it really determines to a great extent how much time you're going to spend with it. Right? But if that material is not heavily represented on the exam, listen, if that material is not heavily represented on the exam, then it doesn't matter if you know it or you don't know it, if you're familiar with it or you're not familiar with it. If you're familiar with it, well, great. You're not going to spend a whole lot of time studying it anyway. If you're not familiar with it, but it's not heavily represented on the exam, then don't spend a whole lot of time in it trying to extract all the information you can from it. So there you go. Chapter 8. If you have any suggestions or comments, please leave them below. Remember to subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell so you know when the material continues to come out. Remember, chapter 8 is a lot of material. It is an important chapter from a testing perspective. But what do you need to know? Number one, when is your test date? And that gives you the amount of time that you're going to spend studying, right? How much of the material are you already familiar with? If you're familiar with it, don't spend a whole lot of time studying it. You got to spend more time on the stuff you don't know. Okay. And what is your learning style? What's the best way for you personally to absorb information and get it into your head, memorize it so that you can regurgitate it on a test? As always, we here at Body Design University want to help you to pass your ACE exam on the first go. Okay, that is the goal. If, of course, you've already taken it and you haven't passed, well, then it's the second or third, wherever you're at. We're here to help you out. Just let us know how we can be of assistance. Have a great weekend. See you.